Yumadav Chavches. Today's email comes from Jamie Salmons. Dear Belly, I've been loving your sharing the whole experience of being part of the Chabura. I was eating out with my wife the other day, and she looked me in the eyes and told me that since I started with you, she has noticed a calmness in my whole demeanor. My kids love it when I come home in the morning with a geschmacka, good morning, Rabbi Isai. Jamie, thanks. Jamie Salmons from Ramat Gimel in Bet Shemesh. So Yumadav Chavches, just to review, yesterday we said that according to Rabbi Yochanan, a Yisrael who's mesaded the shnei gzirei eitzim, he takes the two pieces of wood and puts them onto the marach on the mizbech, he's chayiv misa b'dei shamayim. We said because one of the reasons is it's an avodah tama, it's the completion of the avodah. And indeed, it really requires a lottery by itself. Just they took that lottery of the shnei gzirei eitzim and they added the Trumas Hadeshen to create more interest in the Trumas Hadeshen lottery. But it comes out from Rabbi Yochanan that putting down the shnei gzirei eitzim is considered an avodah tama, and the fact that a Yisrael is chayiv misa, therefore you have a lottery. But if a Yisrael is not chayiv misa, you wouldn't be making a lottery for it. What about shechita? Shechita is something that Yisrael could perform. Nevertheless, there is a lottery. The answer is because shechita is tchilas avodah, it's the beginning of the avodah, and it requires a lottery. Putting the ivarim, the limbs, on the mizbeach, even though it's not the final act, you have to clean it up afterwards, you have to do the deshen, it's not considered an avodah tama. Nevertheless, it does have a lottery. The reason is because that's the end, the final act of the avodah of that day. Trumas Hadeshen, which has another avodah afterwards, you have to clean out the rest of the deshen, the rest of the ashes. It does have a lottery because of the story that happened, and there was a sakana, so they created a lottery. Pretty soon, in just a moment, we're going to have in the first mission of the next parak, it says that the Memuna would ask, did anybody go out there and see if it's time to shech the carbon tamid? But he doesn't ask, is it time to put the shnei gzirei eitzim? The reason is because even if you put the two pieces of wood, you could undo it, you could take the pieces of wood off and put it back on by a kayit. Whereas a tamid, if you shecht it, once you shecht it, there's nothing you can do with it, you have to burn it. And with that we finish Hadran Aloch Perik Sheni, Perik Barishayna. Now we're starting the third Perik. Omar Lehem HaMemuna. The deputy Kohen says, go out and see if it's morning, the time that we could shech the carbon. And that person that sees it, sees the sun, he says, Bar Kai, meaning it's dawn already. Rabbi Shmuel says, Hitchel Bar Kai, it started to become dawn. Rabbi Kiva says a different lashon. Allah Bar Kai, dawn is rising. And Nechumah ben Abishain says, the dawn is even in Chevron. And Rashi brings a Yerushalmi that is to remind the Kodesh Baruch Hu of the Schus Abba is Chevron. Masi ben Shmuel says, he uses a different lashon. Hey, Pnei Kol Mizrach at Chevron. The entire horizon is lit up. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meser says the same lashon, but he says that they're going out to look for workers. So it's a little bit earlier than when people go out to work. It's when the bosses go out to look for employees. Now, how does it work exactly? Either the one on the rooftop, he says, I could see that it's lit up, the horizon is lit up, and the one down on the ground says, what, all the way to Chevron? And the one on the rooftop says, yes. Or it starts differently. The one on the ground asks the one on the roof, Hey, Pnei Mizrach, did the horizon light up? The one on the roof says, all the way to Chevron. So the one on the ground says, Hein, that's exactly what I meant to ask. Thank you. Now, why do we need somebody to go on the roof? Because once upon a time, not on Yom Kippur, just during the year, they made a mistake. They thought that the sun came up. In fact, it was the moon, and they shechted the carbon tamid, and the carbon tamid is possible in that case. They had to burn the carbon tamid right there and then in the Azara. So from that time on, they put a person on the roof to make sure that in fact the sun came out. On Yom Kippur, when the person screams out Bar Kai, it's dawn, they take the Kohen Gadol and they bring him to the mikvah, because the rule is, if someone goes to the bathroom, if it's G'daylam, you have to go be toivel in a mikvah. K'tanim, you do Kiddush Yadayim v'raglayim. Rav Safar, now we're going to have a little bit of a ganta. Rav Safar says, Avram David Mincha, when the wall became dark, in other words, when the top of the wall casts a shadow on the actual wall. And we know the concept of zrizos, of doing things immediately early in the morning from Avram Avinu when he went to do the bris milah. Bris milah could be done the entire day, yet he did it early in the morning. Why is it, if so, that on Erev Pesach that falls out on Erev Shabbos, we shech the carbon tamid a half hour after Chatzos? According to this, we should be able to do it exactly at midday, when the top of the wall casts a shadow on the wall. The answer is because not everybody's like Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu was an astronomer, so he knew exactly how to do it. Another reason is because the Beis Hamikdash was built, tapered. Each row of stones was a little bit more in, so the top of the wall didn't really cast a spell on the wall itself until it was a half hour later. Another answer the Gemara says is that Avraham Avinu was a zaken. In other words, he's a big Talmid Chacham, he knew his stuff, so you can't bring a ride from him. We have to add another half hour. The pasuk says, Mipnei Seva Takum. Seva is referring to an older person. Vardarta Pnei Zaken is referring to Talmid Chacham. Zaken stands for Zekana. He acquired Torah. So Gemara goes on to say that throughout the generations, there's always Talmid Chachamim and yeshivas. In Mitzrayim, it says in the pasuk, Leich v'asafta Ziknei Yisrael. Ziknei referring to Talmid Chachamim. In the Midbar, it says, Esfali Shivim Ish Miziknei Yisrael. Ziknei, once again, referring to the Talmidei Chachamim. Avram himself, it says, V'Avram Zaken Ba Bayomim. Avram himself was a Talmid Chacham. Yitzchak, it says, Vayhi Ki Zaken. He used as a Talmid Chacham. Yaakov Einei Yisrael Kavdim Zaken. His eyesight became weak from learning so much Torah, not because he was old. Eliezer Eved Avram, it says, Vayoyim Avram El Avdoi Zikan Beisoy. In other words, he was a Talmid Chacham. It says about Eliezer, Damesek. What is this word Damesek? It's a combination of two words. Doila, he draws water, Umashka, and he waters Mitayras Rabbi from his Rebbe Avram's Torah to the world. Rav says, the famous Rav, that Avram kept entire Torah, even the Rabbanans that are going to happen many, many years later, such as Erev Tafshilin, that you can't cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos unless you have Erev Tafshilin. How do we know this? Because it says in the pasuk, Eikev Hashashama Avram Bekoili, Vayishmar Mishmarti, kept my Mishmar, Mitzvoisai my mitzvahs, Chukoisai B'Seirosai. Seirosai is plural, meaning not only the Torah Shebiksav, but also the Torah Shebal Peh, such as Erev Tafshilin. Have a wonderful day.